The war on drugs in the Philippines began the day after President Rodrigo Duterte assumed office as President of the Republic of the Philippines. It's operationalized by a command memorandum circular issued by the Philippine National Police on July 1, 2016. This command memorandum circular is known as CMC 16-2016. CMC 16-2016 changed the way the Philippine law enforcement handled the war on drugs. It required every single barangay in the entire country to come up with the list of people who were so-called drug personalities, and that list became the basis of all drug operations that took place in the Philippines. That list was not evidence-based, rather it was based on coordination between the local government units, or what we call barangays, and the local police units. Based on the reports we have gathered, names that appear on that list are not necessarily those of people involved or selling drugs. Some of them have been known to have used drugs, while others had absolutely no connection to any involvement in drug operations, and yet their names somehow managed to appear on those lists. Those lists became the basis for what we call, as found in that circular, tokhang visits, or knock house-to-house visits by the police on so-called drug personalities, quote-unquote, to persuade them to stop their alleged illegal criminal activities. But in reality, these people became targets of not only of police harassment, but also police persecution and extrajudicial killings. The war on drugs also led to the surrender of thousands of Filipinos whose names were then made part of the list. And many of those who were put in that list eventually ended up dead. There have been varying numbers or figures allocated to the number of people who have been killed in the war on drugs. The most authoritative figure can be found in a Supreme Court case that I filed together with other lawyers on behalf of several victims of extrajudicial killings. Based on the resolution of the Supreme Court of the Philippines, from July 1, 2016 up to the end of November 2017, there were 20,322 men, women, and children killed in the war on drugs. That number does not include those who have been killed in December of 2017, in the whole year of 2018, and this year, 2019, from January up to March, as I'm speaking to you this evening. The Supreme Court cited that number of 20,322 deaths based on an accomplishment report in the Office of the President. That's why I'm saying that this is probably the most reliable figure you will find of those who were killed or who have been killed in the war on drugs. What do we find questionable, or why did we file a petition in the Supreme Court? Well, first let me give you a little background. I represented three different kinds of victims in that petition filed in the Supreme Court. The first is a survivor of an extrajudicial killing. He was shot twice in the throat, once in the thigh, left for dead, but somehow managed to survive. The second client of ours was one who supposedly fought back, or in Filipino we call it nanlaban. Supposedly he tried to grab a gun and therefore was killed by the police. But we have witnesses, his wife and his mother, who say that they were there and that he did not fight back, nor did he have possession of a firearm when he was killed. The third client of ours is the sister of a person who was killed allegedly in what in Philippine law is called a buy-bust operation, where the law enforcement operatives posing as buyers of drugs attempted to buy drugs and then tried to arrest the person who was selling drugs, but then was, they claim, fought back or tried to escape and then therefore was shot. But based on our investigation as well, we have strong reason to believe that there was no legitimate buy-bust operation with respect to our third client. We filed a petition to stop the war on drugs, questioning the circular that I mentioned earlier, Command Memorandum Circular 16-2016. We believe that circular is unconstitutional on several reasons. First, because it expressly authorizes extrajudicial killings by using the terms neutralization and negation, which have no legal definition in Philippine law. The circular states that anyone who refuses a house-to-house visit or tokhang may be negated, quote unquote. The circular states that those who are identified as drug personalities should be neutralized. And in police parlance, as we understand it, when an instruction is given to neutralize a person, it could very well include killing that person. We have yet to get a decision from the Supreme Court. We are waiting for the court to rule on the case. It's been, I believe, over a year or almost a year, and no decision has yet come out. While most of those who have been killed in the war on drugs belong to the poorest of the poor, I have to say that this is not just a war on the poor. This is a war on our legal system. It's a brazen attempt to supplant justice from our courts with justice from the battles of guns. And my biggest fear is not just the killings, but the fact that the legal system itself is eroding, and that we have no more rule of law to speak of. Instead, we have the rule of men with guns. And that is of huge concern to us in the Philippines. If the Philippine government is really serious about stopping what they call the drug problem, then they should be going after the drug syndicates, the big-time organized crime that is responsible for bringing in billions of pesos of shipments of drugs into the country. They should stop killing the poor. The other point I'd like to address is the withdrawal of the Philippines from the Rome Statute that created the International Criminal Court. I am really so concerned about this because under Philippine law, we have what is known as the presidential immunity from suit. This is a doctrine that has been recognized time and again by the Philippine Supreme Court. And that doctrine prevents anyone from prosecuting a criminal case against the sitting president of the Philippines while he is in power as president. In other words, under the principle of complementarity, we will not be able to prosecute President Duterte in the Philippines because of that doctrine of presidential immunity. And that is why recourse to the ICC is so important to us in the Philippine human rights community. It's the only legal remedy available while the president is sitting in the palace. The government, of course, claims that it is possible to prosecute the president here in the Philippines, but my own personal experience shows that is not true. Early on in this administration, we filed a petition on behalf of Senator Laila de Lima, the first senator to be imprisoned by the Duterte government, for the slut-shaming and for the insult that he had been heaping on her as a woman. But soon after we filed the petition, the government, through its lawyer, the Solicitor General, invoked presidential immunity. And since that time, our case hasn't moved an inch. So we can expect that any criminal prosecution of the president would result in a similar invocation of presidential immunity that would stop the prosecution in its tracks. What this administration has done as far as the war on drugs is concerned will have a lasting impact on human rights in the Philippines. The weaponization of lists has had such an adverse chilling effect not only on the judiciary, the independence of the judiciary, but also on our press, who have become very reluctant to come out with articles critical of the administration because they fear that their names may come out on the list the next time a list is released by the government. More than that, the kind of administration that has been brought down on us is one that is completely anti-human rights. Human rights defenders have been threatened, and many of us have been killed as well in this under this administration. By our count, 36 lawyers, some of whom are human rights lawyers, have been killed since 2016. A number of priests have also been killed, several environmental activists, among others. So the violence has just resulted in more violence being brought, not just on those perceived to be involved in drugs, but also other sectors of society, especially the progressives and the activists. While the government has claimed that it really doesn't care about international pressure, we do believe that international pressure has been very helpful in terms of highlighting what's happening in the country and to some extent, influencing the way government is going about its operations. We do hope that the international community will continue to put pressure on the Philippine government to adhere to its commitments under international human rights instruments.